Hi everybody, thanks for joining us this morning. We're just going to spend a bit of time chatting through some questions that have been sent in about the RTYDS 18-month residency. Sue, I've got some questions for you.
And just so you know, I'm Sue, I'm the Artistic Director of RTYDS. And also you didn't introduce yourself.
Sorry, I'm Kate. I am interim project producer looking after the application process for 18-month residencies. We've got some questions that have been sent in advance, but if anybody has any questions as they're listening to the conversation this morning, then do feel free to send them through and we'll do our best to answer them. Okay, so there's a few questions, Sue, that have come in about the scheme in general and about kind of what its ambitions are. So Tom in Manchester was wanting to know what for you makes this scheme different to other schemes that are run for directors.
I guess it's threefold, I would say. One is it's about developing director's craft. So it's spending time in rehearsals, being an assistant, working with creative participation, all of the output that the theatres have across the creative board. That might be script development as well, so it's artistic, but it's also hopefully developing people's leadership skills and interest in leadership as an artistic director or creative leader. And so what hopefully happens over the 18 months is you get embedded into the theatres and you learn about development, finance, marketing, creative participation, programming, the whole range of stuff that goes on in a building. And hopefully what we want to do is to encourage artistic leaders of the future. There's very few routes into artistic directorship. A lot of people tend to do it for the first time when they go and get a job as an artistic director, and we're trying to make that path kind of easier and more informed. And then the third, I think, really important thing is that the director gets a chance to make a piece of work. And I think increasingly it's getting harder for people to make work, and certainly in a resource way where you don't have to self-produce. So as part of the 18-month residency, the really important aspect is working with the building to come up with a piece of work, whether that's a new play or an existing play, for you to develop, fully resourced, produced by them. Excuse me. So hopefully there's an opportunity to develop your craft, but then actually practice your craft by getting a chance to make a show.
Brilliant. Great. Next question that was sent in is Susie from Northampton, and she was interested. There's 4 theatres that are taking part this time.
Yep.
And she was asking whether she can choose which theatre she goes to, or does she have to be open to going to any of them?
Really good question. So it's a mix in some ways. So what we hope is that people are really open to seeing how many of those theatres they're interested in and they can go to. So what we don't do at the point of application is ask you to express a preference. Okay. So what we hope is that if you get involved in the selection process of kind of getting down to the interview to meet the artistic directors, that you're open to any of those theatres. However, what we really do recognise is there might be reasons where you can't move your life across the country, and that might be due to your housing situation, it might be down to caring or parental responsibilities, it might be down to access requirements or having support systems in place in terms of people and support that you need within your own kind of area. So when on the form it says if there is for any reason that you feel you can't go to any of those theatres, just let us know at the point of application and we will feed that in to the application process. But like I say, in some ways you might think that, oh, I don't really think that the curve's terribly right for me, I'd much rather go to Contact. But sometimes the surprise of it can be going through the process to leave yourself as open as you can be practically, but really do realise that moving halfway across the country for everybody is not necessarily an option. But we do support those moves in some ways, in that the theatre helps find the accommodation. There's relocation costs that we provide for people to move. So we're trying to kind of keep flexibility for people.
Brilliant, great. So Nasima from Liverpool has asked, how do you know which venue they'd be placed at, and how is that choice made? So if somebody is open to all of them, how is the choice made about where they might be placed?
Well, what we do is, so there's the selection where we meet everybody who expresses an interest, and then we go through a process, then sending the applications to the artistic directors, and then the artistic directors with us come up with a selection of people that they interview, and that's usually about 20 to 24 people. And then we go through to 8 people, and it's usually about that point that the artistic directors mostly will make the decision, but feeding in any particular interests or expressions of interest that the directors have themselves. So I think what we try to do is keep it really open, so it's that matchmaking between the theatres and the directors. So going through the interview process, people will find out for themselves whether, you know, Curve feels right for them, or Contact, or Live in Newcastle. So it's really a kind of through the interview process.
Okay.
And what happens is that the directors are there to make the decision, but what we always do is ask the directors in private, what's the word, anonymously, that's not in private, that sounds slightly strange, anonymously, to place if they have particular preference in terms of the theatres, and then again we can put that into play should we need to. But to be honest, in the sort of probably the 15 years I've been doing this, those processes are always really fluid, and sometimes it's a real surprise, but it's often down to the interests of the director and where it feels like the theatre will most benefit their craft and their progression and their learning.
Okay, brilliant.
Does that answer that question?
Yeah, I think it does. The next question that's been sent in is from Maddie in Leicester, and she was interested. There's talk on the website about a partnership with Ramps on the Moon for this time.
Yes.
And she was just asking a bit more information about how that's come about and how it might work.
Well, really excitingly, we've been working with Ramps on the Moon for quite a while. We've done various projects with them, and they do fantastic work for deaf and disabled artists, and they wanted to partner with us to offer one of the 18-month residencies will be for a deaf or disabled artist, and that's not just one of them, that's kind of be the minimum of the 18 months. So we're really encouraging deaf and disabled artists to see this as an opportunity to get embedded in a theatre, and obviously Ramps on the Moon will be supporting us and also the theatres, just to ensure in terms of disability awareness training, making sure we're putting everything in place to support those deaf and disabled artists who are expressing an interest in the 18-month residency. So
Right.
They very generously have brilliantly supported one of those 18-month residencies. This time we were only due to have 3, and now we're able to have 4 because of the generous partnership that we've got with Ramps on the Moon. So it's really exciting for us, and also we're learning as an organisation more in terms of what we need to think about for deaf and disabled artists, and also so will the 4 theatres through this process too.
Brilliant. Great. There's then a couple of questions that have been sent in about how people can gauge whether the scheme is right for them. So Sam from Bolton has asked, how do I know if I'm at the right stage of my career to apply for this opportunity?
I think that's always a tricky one, because for everybody, different things are going to be useful at different times. I think because the important thing is to recognise that assisting is very much at the heart of this opportunity. So you might assist over an 18-month period on 3 or 4 shows. And I think it's really important to know if that's still useful for you and what you're going to learn from it. And that's what the theatres and the artistic directors will be interested in you articulating in the application process as well, will be why do you want to assist? Where are the gaps in your learning? What do you want to get out of it? So I think that's a really important aspect. But also I think you need to think about what you're going to get from it in terms of that assisting, but also maybe some skills that you can bring to it. So I think if you're straight out of university and maybe you've not had that much of an opportunity to make your own work yet, or maybe be in a professional rehearsal room, it might be, I'm not saying it could be, will be definitely, but it might be a little too early, because you need to be in a position where you can make the most of this opportunity and know that you're in this building, and for those 18 months you're really kind of ready to kind of grab every opportunity going, but also that you might be kind of required for this not to be, excuse me, your very first assistant time in a professional rehearsal room. But again, I think that's for you to decide. Because we've also, if you look at the RTYDS website, we've got different levels. So we've got Introduction to Directing, which is for it really kind of potential directors, is this right for me? Then we've got the 3-month placements, which is maybe for that first time when you're in a professional rehearsal room and kind of you're a new director. And I know I hate this terminology, but we use it all the time because it's tricky not to. And then 18 months is more for kind of early career. Sometimes people use the word emerging directors. I've no idea what that means. But kind of for those directors who are still sort of feeling that assisting is giving them a lot of fuel for their kind of craft and thought. Okay,
brilliant. And then sort of linked to knowing whether the scheme is right for you as an individual, Joe from Scotland has sent in a question saying, is it possible to do it part-time?
That's a really good question, and something that we're talking to the theatres about, because I can understand with caring commitments or with access requirements that sometimes that can feel much more attractive than full-time. So I think we're going to take it on a case-by-case basis. I think what we do want to feel is that person can really get embedded. And as someone who works part-time for another theatre in London, it's actually sometimes quite hard to really get inside something part-time. So we'd need to structure something really carefully. And I think you would probably need to be still moving near to that theatre. I think it's quite hard to live away from the theatre and do part-time, because the commute will be probably quite onerous, but also you just won't necessarily understand the landscape of that city or that region by not being near it and being part-time. But like I say, I think we just need to be really responsive to that, really flexible, and work out on a case-by-case basis how we can make that work. But again, if that is something that is really that you really need to put in place in order for this to be something that you can access, then please let us know.
Great. I can see there's lots of people watching, which is great. If you have any questions, then do feel free to send them through. We've got a few more that we'll work through, but we'll also keep an eye out in case any more come in. So there's a few questions now that are about how to apply for the scheme and a bit about what the selection process is. Okay. So Malika from London has asked to know a bit more about what happens on the selection days.
Great. So the selection day is really important to us, because what we've done is undertake for the last probably 5 to 6 years is to meet everybody who expresses an interest. So last year, for example, that was 190 odd people kind of expressed an interest. And what we do is organise kind of meeting days. There's one in Manchester, there's one in Birmingham, there's one in London, and there's also a Skype day. And what we do is ensure that through those 4 days, everybody is met. It's only a 10-minute meeting, because there is a kind of like often between 190, 200 people. But what it means is you get to meet somebody who knows RTYDS really well. It won't be any representatives of the theatres, but it'll be artists who've either taken part in an 18-month residency or know the theatres or RTYDS really well. And last time that was people like Leo Skilbeck, Amit Sharma, Elise Ishmael. So we have Kash Arshad. So it's a whole range of different artists, and you'll meet one director for 10 minutes, and they will just really find out a bit more about you, maybe ask some questions about why you're interested in this, why it's right for you at this moment. And really, in some ways, it's just to supplement the information on your application form. And if there's any questions that arose, like, oh, I didn't quite understand that, then we can just fill in that information, so that when we're looking at the applications, we've just got a rounded sense. And some people don't express themselves brilliantly on paper, but they do in person, and sometimes the other way around. But therefore, we've got those two things that we can put into play. And it's also there for you to ask any questions. But it is 10 minutes, and it's kind of to think out what's the best way to use that time for us to find out a bit more about you.
Brilliant. There's a couple of questions now about the actual application form. So the first is from Ollie in Hull, and he asks, is the application form available in any other formats if he needs it?
Yes, it's dyslexia friendly, and there's also large print. What we're trying to do, and forgive us, we haven't quite managed it yet, is to get it in BSL. But if for any reason you want to have the application form in a format that we've not thought about, or if you do use BSL as your first language and it'd be easier for us to work with you in a different way, please let us know. So we're kind of open to people applying in the way that best suits them and best enables them to express their interest and their sort of experience so far.
Brilliant. And then Mira from Coventry has asked a tricky question. What are you trying to find out from the application form?
That is a very, very good question. I guess in some ways, what we've tried to do is ask questions that hopefully invite you to think about what you want to say about the world, the work you want to make, and to think about your practice or your process. So hopefully it's intended as a bit of a way to ask you to think about, why do you want to do this? Mm-hmm. What do you want to get out of it? What you're going to bring to it? what your experience is thus far and maybe where the gaps are. I guess in some ways just a bit about your taste. All of these 4 theatres make work in really different ways for, in some ways, different audiences. And it's not to say that we're trying to make people, I hate the expression, kind of fit. We're just trying to kind of find out maybe where there's similarities and sometimes where there's differences and exchanges in terms of what the theatres make in terms of their aesthetic and what the directors are interested in as well in their practice. So it's I guess, to give us as clear as a kind of form can do, is a sense of how you express, is this right for you at this right moment, and what you're going to get out of it. So I think it's just that thing, I'm sort of repeating myself, what you're going to get from it and what you're going to bring to it.
Great. Yeah. So a few questions now about what actually happens on each of the placements. So Natalia from Kent has asked, how much assisting would she get to do?
Again, it's very dependent on each of the 4 theatres, but I think it's safe to say anything from 3 to 4 assistantships during that 18-month period. And it sometimes just depends on how much producing that individual theatre does, whether it's doing co-productions, whether there's tours. There can be a whole different range of work, or it might be that you get to assist on a big community show someone's doing with kind of non-professionals. There's a range of activity across those 4 kind of theatres.
Okay, brilliant. And then Misha from Newcastle has asked, what support would I get from RTYDS during the placement?
Great. What we try and do before people go, well, not try and do, what we do before people go on placement is that we have a meeting with well, this case will be the 4 directors. It's sort of, we call it induction, but really it's just to talk about strategies for making the best use of kind of being there for the 18 months, to answer any questions, to do a bit of coaching before people go off, to maybe set some goals, to give a little bit of help in terms of thinking about how you begin your journey of working in an organisation. And just also for those 4 people to meet each other, to establish a bit of a support network for each other in terms of peer-to-peer mentorship. Then through the placement, we kind of keep in touch with people, we go on visits, there's kind of points of connection. We're always there on the end of a phone if anything's come up, or if people have got any questions or uncertainties. And we keep in touch with the theatres as well, so we're sort of contacting both sides of the kind of partnership. And there's kind of 6 months, 12 months and 18 months where there's more formal connection in terms of feedback or evaluation that we ask to be carried out. But so we're really there, but we also very much encourage that the director and the theatres are making a really close link to each other, and we're sort of, I don't know, standing back a bit, sort of enabling and supporting any way that we can.
Okay, brilliant.
And then post kind of coming out, we keep in contact with people and put together action learning sets and kind of like continue to get the directors to meet up with each other, not just from their cohort of 4, but also kind of different years as well. So that kind of hopefully then expands those networks as well.
Great. So you talked a little bit earlier, Sue, about the fact that each of the directors will get to direct a show as part of their placement. And Emmanuel from Wolverhampton has actually asked, how is the show picked that I will direct?
Oh, very good question. I think that is so dependent on each of the theatres, because it might be for some of them, and what we ask the theatres to do, which will, I think in some shape or form should be live on our website, is sort of almost like an activity plan for what you would get to do while you were there. And obviously sometimes things can shift and they might not be able to say the actual title of the play, but they will give an indication within their programming, whether that is a community show or a Shakespeare or whatever, so you get a sense of what your activity schedule might look like. And it could be for some theatres that within their programme they kind of know that it might be a show that does this sort of thing, and that might be kind of like a rural tour, or it might be specifically a show for families at Christmas. So for some theatres there might be something a bit more set, whereas for others it could be very much about through the 18 months, they'll begin to have the conversation with the director and kind of work out in terms of for the space or for what they need that production to be doing for their audience or their program. They will begin to find titles together or kind of work out what the process of coming up with the choice of that play might be. So obviously, whatever you do will need to fit within the programming construct of that theatre, as opposed to you having complete freedom to choose whatever you want to make.
Okay, brilliant. A couple of practical questions now. Chris from Loughborough has asked, do I get any holidays?
No, yes. What happens is that you would end up on a contract with the theatre, so that therefore any of the rights and benefits that theatre gives to all employees you would get. So in terms of sick pay, in terms of holiday, all that kind of thing, you get everything that you should as a kind of member of an organisation. Great.
And then obviously we hope that this doesn't happen, but Charlotte from Cheshire has asked, can I leave if I don't like it?
Yes. Luckily, touch wood, that actually hasn't happened for as long as I can remember. But yes, I think we would have to take that really seriously in terms of it could well be that you, for whatever reason, it feels that it's not working personally or professionally. Something might happen in your life. It may be that no matter about best endeavours on both sides, that somehow there just isn't a connection between that individual and that organisation. But I think we'd work really hard to find ways to support both the theatre and the director to work really hard to ensure that that doesn't happen. But yes, I mean, if it comes to that, we would have to work really hard to find a way to respond to that situation.
Okay, great. And then our last couple of questions, so do feel free to send in questions if you haven't had your question answered yet, are about what happens at the end of the residencies. So Dev from South Shields has asked, am I guaranteed a job at the end of the residency?
Sadly, the answer to that is no. But I think we've got a really strong track record of those theatres continuing to support the directors. In some instances, they have stayed on as an associate director or a trainee associate director, but that is by no means guaranteed. I think it is an 18-month period. What we really do ask the theatres to demonstrate when they also have to apply to get one of the 18-month residencies is that they need to demonstrate the legacy for that person and that ongoing connection. And I think it's really important that those directors do continue to have links with the theatre. It might be they're invited back to do work in their creative learning, or it might be that they're hopefully given a show for further down the line once they've left their 18-month opportunity. But there isn't any guarantee, I'm afraid. It is just 18 months, and then we really endeavour to encourage and facilitate the theatre and directors continuing to have ongoing relationships.
Great. And then our final question is from Will in Cardiff, and he asks, what will happen at the end of the residency in terms of my relationship with RTYDS?
Great. Well, what as I think I said earlier, what we try and do is set up moments through the year where we get together kind of RTYDS alumni to maybe have action learning sets or just meet together to talk about experiences, share questions, support each other. But also for us, it's really vital that we utilise the alumni, like for those selection meetings that we do as part of the 18 months. So a lot of the directors who we ask to come and meet those prospective 18 months have done it themselves, and therefore they have knowledge and experience, and they can feed in generally to our thinking. They can run workshops for us. So for us, they become a really vital resource that we can draw on and utilise, and also for them to be an advocate for hopefully the schemes that we run being useful for directors, for them to encourage other directors to take part and to kind of demonstrate through their experience why it's useful, as opposed to us just talking about it and saying, oh, it's great, do it. They can kind of demonstrate really clearly why they think people should kind of participate in the schemes.
Brilliant. Great. That's all the questions that we've had sent in advance. If there's anything that we've not covered, then do feel free to get in touch. And in the text that sits alongside this film, there's a link to the RTYDS website, which has all the downloads, including the application form. So we'd really welcome you to apply. And a reminder that the closing deadline is noon on Monday, the 30th of March. So send applications in before then, and we'll be back in touch with everybody. Great.
Okay.
Thanks, Sue.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.